Hello everybody, thank you for joining in as usual to the Sky's the Limit YouTube channel. As you can see, we're in the European Parliament today and I'm in the distinguished company of a wonderful fighter politician who never gives up. Nikki Sinclaire. Nikki, thank you so much for your time today.
Absolute pleasure.
Before we get to some of the more pertinent points, I was looking through your biography. You've been in politics forever and ever, and in terms of demographics, looking at your background, general election of spring 1979, why aren't you in the Labour Party? Why aren't you in the Labour Party from your background?
Well, I grew up in a council estate, and I think obviously 1979 was the advent of Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah.
And I think it was just this very strong woman, and I think that captured my imagination.
Okay.
There was also the winter of discontent, and we had queuing up for bread, fire brigade strike, green goddesses on the street, all these type of things, rubbish stacking up. And it was like, well, they don't really care about the work. We had a Labour government, and it wasn't like that they cared about us. And Margaret Thatcher said, well, if you work hard enough, you can achieve whatever you want to. So at the age of 10, somehow this resonated with me, and I thought, well, that's who I support. I didn't really fully understand it at the time.
Okay, and you've come a long way since then. I'm not going to go into all the history. In the biography, we'll cover that, everybody, a little of Nikki's background. Certainly very colourful, well-travelled, well-spoken, and a whole myriad of things that we haven't got time to go into. Your raison d'etre to be here, Nikki, of course, is the referendum campaign.
Yes.
I'll go straight to that. Now the dust has settled post David Cameron's famous declaration on that. Were you a little bit disappointed with the conditions that he imposed on that? To give just a little background on that, presuming that they win an outright majority the next time. Now, just last week, or early this, wasn't it? Yeah, that Moody's, the ratings agency, took away England's or the UK's AAA rating. I can see if that continues, that they will be punished, the Conservatives, next time round.
Yes.
Notwithstanding, I'm surprised even that they can maintain the coalition as is.
Okay.
Anyway, what was your feeling about that? Because you're not a Conservative, obviously, or a Tory, but were you disappointed at the conditionality and the timeline he imposed on that?
Of the referendum,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, there is no guarantees. He's talking about if he wins an outright majority. He's also talking about if he gets a renegotiation. Well, we've already heard certain leading politicians, such as President Schulz here in the Parliament, saying there can be no renegotiation. And what guarantees does he get from the renegotiation? If you remember that John Major achieved quite an opt-out on the Maastricht Treaty about the social chapter, only for Labour to win the next general election and sign us up to the social chapter, which is one of the things that I get most complaints about from small businesses, which are the largest employers within the UK. So what guarantees do we have? So there's no guarantees of a referendum. They're saying, well, we might have a referendum, but he's very pro-EU, he wants us to stay within the European Union, he wants to make the case. But what about if it doesn't follow how he wants it? And he's also, there might be a bit of an unholy alliance here between the Europhiles and us Eurosceptics. Because what we're arguing is that actually, if you're pushing this into the long grass, you're creating uncertainty for business. You're creating uncertainty for investment. And I think that's one of the things that I've discovered since becoming here as an MEP. I came here as a Eurosceptic. I wanted to leave. I don't care. I just wanted to leave the European Union. And I've changed in those 3.5 years. What I've actually witnessed here is that we're in a terrible halfway house. And that the politicians from the Labour, the Conservatives, the Lib Dems, they're not doing the British people a service. They're not proactively making the case because they can't. They've got one eye over their shoulder looking at the electorate back home. So we're in this halfway house. We're neither fully in and fully engaged here, nor are we outside the European Union, which I think is still the best way for us. And that's why I'm so pro-referendum, that I actually think that which way, we need to make a decision, because this current situation of a halfway house is disastrous, and Cameron knocking it into the long grass is just the worst possible medicine for the UK.
Yeah, well, very good. I mean, that leads me on to my next point. Everyone else out there knows I'm Irish, and from that perspective, we are quite the experts on referenda with Nice and Lisbon. And, Nikki, for me, I have a dog in this hunt as well because of the disconnect. I mean, sometimes the partisan colours of left and right, I'm quite disillusioned with that. I don't do left wing, right wing. I've said on my videos many times, I don't have wings, I'm not a chicken. What I do like, though, is good ideas, and if it makes sense. And that's why, like when going back to your early bio, you bucked the trend because presumably from a working class background, you should have fed in immediately to the Labour Party or something like that, but you decided to use your own imagination. What I'm saying, the difficulty with referenda, though, is oftentimes the question posed, it's just in or out with the UK, if it ever happens. But sometimes it can be used, would you not agree, to sort of punish, the government of the day or something like, as a reactionary thing rather than addressing the question, because there's simply so little interest and disaffection with the European project in Europe in general, certainly since 1995. I mean, David Cameron, when he said in his last election, yes, Europe is a factor and we'll bring that up, satisfy the backbenchers or something like that. I think the phrase he used was, but we shouldn't keep banging on about Europe. And it's kind of like maybe 12 on the list as far as people are concerned. So that disconnect is what I'm saying to you. We said this yesterday off camera, but what do you think about that? If we can't engage citizens, I mean, the participation for any elections you care to mention, council, local, referenda, European elections, you're averaging 37, 40 something percent, So whether you're Eurosceptic or pro-Europe, what do you account for, or what would you like to see in that disconnect with people?
Well, I think that the reason why you get low turnouts is where people feel, as you say, disconnected from politics. And I think that's because of the advent of the professional politician. People are told what to think. I mean, in the UK, we've just had police commissioner votes, so people didn't understand what they were. It wasn't articulated well enough. They had the election in winter, and you had turnouts of about 12%. So the main political parties in the UK have actually given a disservice. They've turned it into professional soundbite politics, and we have less and less conviction politicians. And I admire Margaret Thatcher and I admire Tony Benn, totally different from the wings, as you would say. But I admire both of them because they very much stand up and say what they believe, and we have that missing in politics. But I think on the European issue, to go back with this, yes, you only have maybe 30% turnout in a European election, but with my mobile surgery that's going around the region, we get people queuing up to express their opinion that they want a referendum or they want to leave the European Union. So people do care about it. I do follow the thing that what you're saying is that if there was just a vote on a particular day, it could be that they weren't happy with the government of a day. And you do get that. I think the referendum in France on Maastricht was a particular just rebellion against not Maastricht, on the constitution was a bit of a rebellion against the French government. But what we're calling for in the We Demand a Referendum party is a royal commission. To look at the cost-benefit analysis, because one of the things that turns people off about the debate on Europe now, if I had someone pro-European sat next to me, someone like Malcolm Harbour, we'd be spending 15 minutes arguing about how much percentage. I say 73% of our, or 75% of our laws are made here in the European Parliament. He say, no, it's not. I say, we spend £53 million a day in the European Union. He says, no, we don't. And we'd be arguing about that. We need to find out the facts. And I think we need to have an intelligent debate, okay? And then let the people decide. And people say, oh, but people don't really understand the complexities of the European Union. Well, sorry, we're a democracy. I read a piece in one of the newspapers about the last general election, because the last general election was based on an economic argument, and only 15% understood the economic arguments. In the middle of a recession, but we still elected a government. So are those people who don't want a referendum? Are they making the case that democracy's, is finished, and that we should go the Mario Monti route in Italy and just have technocrats rule in our countries?
Absolutely.
So that's why it's about, the European Union. We became citizens of the European Union in the Maastricht 1992. That fundamentally changed the constitutional position. No one asked me if I wanted to change my citizenship. And I think that's a fundamental change. And if you ignore the will of the people, or ignore the people, they'll think, well, what can we change? What's the point? And I think one of the things that I found in the last 3 years, people are sick and tired of Europe. They're absolutely sick and tired.
Well, one of the things I admire about you, and it's indeed the reason I'm doing this interview today, I shall show my hand, I have no apologies about that. I don't like to align myself with any particular group or anything, Nikki, but I think, I've said it many times to people, I admire you because what you do is you swim against the tide, and that's not a bad thing. You provide a punctuation in a sentence, or maybe a semicolon. You say pause. Let's think about for a minute. I have, of course, say to my subscribers, it's a humanist, secular channel, and from my great mentor Richard Dawkins, like him or loathe him, he gave us the phraseology of consciousness raising. And in the atheist campaign, for example, Nikki, we actually took a lot of the philosophy from the feminist movement and their struggles back to, well, going back to the suffragettes, and the gay rights movement, the coming out thing, that, you know, if you're not religious, just say so, don't be a hypocrite and all that. And it's a difficult struggle we have, so I kind of, from a different genre, I understand where you're coming from. Just on this point, the fractious nature of it, Nikki. Some people looking in the back, or in the background, if you will, you know, and from the Tory side, the Dan Hannans, the Nigel Farages, your good self, you know, one would see that if, I would love to see this referendum happen to satisfy concerns, continental or British. You know, I mean, just get it over with, honestly, and do it. So I'm frustrated that it isn't. I'd like, you know, we didn't get an earlier date, shall we say, from David Cameron. Do you think that people observe it, as I say, the broken nature of it? Same objective, but it's all fractured. If there were more unity, I don't mean a manifesto as such, you understand, but it's sort of a singular campaign with either yourself or Dan Hannan or something. You say, look, we chalk and cheese on this, but, you know, this is worth sort of having a sort of a little, I don't know, technical group just for that alone. Do you know what I mean? And even representation in the House, speaking time and all that would help, would it not?
It is absolutely frustrating that we are so divided. And there's a lot of, I'm the only Eurosceptic in the village about some of those people. A few years ago when I set up a 100,000 petition to try to force a debate, I invited everyone. There was no one excluded, and we got some Labour politicians, you know, Kate Hoey, Austin Mitchell, Calvin Hopkins. We had some Conservatives, that sort of some Green politicians, you know, across the board. And some UKIP, but not Nigel Farage. He refused to. Dan Hannan refused to. And a few other leading Eurosceptic organisations refused to be part of it. Of course, when it was successful and the debate was forced, they wanted to claim their part of the success, which is a little galling, but it doesn't matter. We achieved, we moved the argument forward. But it is so fractious. If we all work together, but it's what I would call, it's the only Eurosceptic in the village, and I think Mr Farage suffers from that more than anyone else.
The less said about it, the better, I think. You're incredibly driven and principled. That's why I respect you. You're running, you told me, in 2012, the European elections.
14.
I wonder, and good luck with that. Would you not consider running for Parliament in the UK as an MP?
Well, I have done on 2 or 3, but I mean, obviously it's much more difficult. It's a first past the post. Last time in 2010, it was from a very difficult standing start because I had just left UKIP, so that was difficult. Yes, I mean, I intend to stand for Westminster again, but obviously I'll be standing in the European elections of 2014 under the old kind of Jimmy Goldsmith referendum. You know, we demand a referendum banner. To keep the pressure on this issue. I think that I have still a lot of work to do on that, and I think I could do a good job on that and force an issue with one more term here.
Not to take away from that very, very important singular agenda, but isn't it a singular agenda? What do you think of the perspective of that? Forgive me the reference, I'm here to talk to you not about UKIP, but it's thrown up by the BBC and whomever all the time. You know, you're a one-horse race, a one-man band, and you have a singular agenda. Apparently they have a manifesto on other things.
UKIP do, yeah.
Yes, I mean, it's even like my subscribers on YouTube, Nikki. I mean, I bang on all the time about British Humanist Association, the Richard Dawkins Science Foundation, and things like that. But sometimes I do it, like they say to me, Sky, what else are you into? You know, can you give us something else for a change? Do you see that singular focus? And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, but do you think it's sort of a little bit blinkered, Nikki, sometimes? That if people knew how you felt about other issues, they will do about your civil liberties and all those concerns you have. But if it were more vocal, do you understand that people have a bigger canvas to sort of support you rather than restrict yourself to just one issue?
Yes, I mean, obviously the issue why I'm here, I'm very much, you know, I'm very conscious of the reason why I was elected. Of course. So that's my main job here. it's not the only thing I do. And of course, most of the reason why people just think that I just bang on about Europe, to do a David Cameron phrase, is because that's all probably the media report. They don't look at the things that I do, that I'm doing a big thing about debt at the moment, about equality and planning. My human rights work that I do, and I'm not talking about the Strasbourg courts, I'm talking about where human rights means life or death. You know, I was in Bahrain just before Christmas visiting prisoners of conscience.
Yeah.
I've been to Gaza. I was in Tunisia weeks after the revolution meeting the interim government. And I've received many more invites. I just simply don't have the time. I was invited to be an election observer in Chechnya. Yeah. So, you know, I really care passionately. And one day I would like this Europe issue to be over. And I would like to, you know, expand on some of that type of work, because I really feel I'm a Democrat. And I think that's probably where my annoyance of the European Union, the fact that we've never, as I talked earlier about the citizenship thing, you know, no one asked me, and I feel really passionate that we live in a democracy, and many have died for that right to give us a democracy. And I feel strongly that in Britain, that we should have a democracy and we should choose, but I also feel passionately that everyone around the world should be given a chance to say how they're governed, and they shouldn't be imprisoned or tortured because they just want to say on how they're governed.
Nikki, you're an optimist and so am I, and probably the last point we'll make. Do you feel, though, that we're hamstringed a little bit now? We're in a blackmail position because of the euro crisis. In other words, no one's giving it up tomorrow or anytime soon. And it's just that, as you know very well, that depends on a more federal Europe, new treaties in order to create the equivalent of what the United States has, a Federal Reserve, you know, the European Central Bank. So as I say, we're sort of blackmailed into that. At least Cameron, if he sort of, you know, he can put his cards on the table and say, well, look, Britain will stay in, but we renegotiate a whole deal and a whole new situation. But I mean, for me, I see no appetite among the citizens for further integration and more federalism. No. But as people have said, perhaps yourself, the elites don't seem to be listening. I mean, my frustration sometimes, what I love about what you guys do in plenary, and even Nigel Farage, is that while people were laughing at you for years and years, and that silly grin on Mr. Barroso's face, you know, finally someone wiped a smile off his face, because even I, as a citizen, regardless of anything else I do in this world, I was looking at those debates, even on the height of the crisis, and I say, why are you grinning like a monkey when people are suffering in austerity in Greece? What my country, Ireland, has been destroyed, and you're smiling?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I've noticed since I've been here, when you first come here, they're almost laughing at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now they're worried and they're angry, because they know their projects. But it goes back, I agree that they're using the financial crisis as an excuse to have a greater control, greater federalism. And Cameron, at the end of the day, we keep hearing from British Prime Ministers, oh, we're drawing a line in the sand, we've got the red lines, we're not moving any further. In fact, we're repatriating. Lisbon was supposed to be repatriating powers. I don't know where it did repatriate powers. And we hear this all the time, oh no, British interests, only to find down the line that they've been given away slowly. Yeah? We know how much Europe makes decisions on our daily life. And the average person in the street knows more and more. They feel more and more entrapped by the European Union. And I don't think that's just in the UK, I think that's across Europe. And I think that the European Union's leaders need to realise they need to go back and listen to the people. I don't think they will, unfortunately. But, you know, no empire exists. And I noticed that despite the shortage of money here in Brussels, they're building more and more Romanesque, glorified buildings to their power and their glory.
Well, that's a very good note to end it on. There we are, everyone. We have to leave it there. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found that interesting. Please leave a comment below and inform yourself a little bit about what's going on, especially to my American viewers. I know you appreciate the European dimensions sometimes. Nikki Sinclaire, thank you so much for your time today. An absolute pleasure.
Thank you.